Hello, movie nerds, and welcome back to Cinematic Sarcastic, podcast that talks all things movies and television. I'm Natalie, and I'm your host. On today's episode, we are going to talk about Miller's Girl. Now, this one is not getting nearly as much attention right now as Madam Web. I think this one kind of came out completely under the radar. I don't think that very many people are watching it. I understand why. I think that the majority of people that are watching it aren't enjoying it. I understand why that is too. But I didn't really think much of Miller's Girl until I started seeing the kerfuffle that was kicking off on like X and all over social media about how inappropriate it was that they did this movie with Jenna Ortega and Martin Freeman and the giant age gap between them, and how that just shouldn't be done in Hollywood anymore and all of that good stuff. So I had to sit down and watch Miller's Girl just to see like how inappropriate was this movie that people were up in arms over the age gap difference between these two characters. And I have to say, I have never been so disappointed in a movie that is meant to be saucy in my life. So the story of Miller's Girl is basically Martin Freeman, who many of you might remember as a young Bilbo Baggins, plays the character of Jonathan Miller, hence the title, and Jenna Ortega plays the character of Cairo Sweet. And the whole premise of this movie is that Cairo Sweet is this sort of trust fund baby, I guess. I found her deeply unlikable just right out of the gate, just based on what her character was supposed to be. So she comes from a family of generational wealth. Her parents are off gallivanting around Europe, and they have left her, a freshly 18-year-old, alone in this giant mansion in the middle of rural Tennessee. Now, her kind of whole personality centers around how she's this rich girl who's never gotten to experience life, and the only part of life that she has are her books and her writing, and you know how she kind of just basically looks down on everyone else around her because they can't possibly be as intelligent as she is, right? So she has a best friend named Winnie. The two of them, I feel like, are just deeply inappropriate people. Like, Winnie is trying to have an affair with one of her teachers, a Mr. Fillmore in the movie. She says some things and does some things with him that me as a teenager, I would die. I would die before ever saying that to one of my teachers. But honestly, the most disappointing thing for me about Miller's Girl is that I am an hour into this movie and there is no affair. Like, Martin Freeman and Jenna Ortega are supposed to be having an affair in this movie. Martin Freeman's character, Mr. Miller, you know, he's a married man. And really kind of the whole premise of it is like his wife insults him. Like, he is a writer or was a writer in the past, had some things published, I think, but he's now teaching high school, and his wife makes this offhanded comment to him about, well, you're not a writer, you haven't written anything in years, you're just a teacher, like, that's all you are. And yes, though I understand how hurtful that can be, his retaliation for that and needing an ego boost was sleeping with his 18-year-old student. And so really it's kind of this thing of like, nobody understands me but you, 18-year-old girl. And then her thing is like, nobody understands me but you, teacher who's a writer and who can understand my large words. Like, it's just the most ridiculous thing ever, you know? It's like, how tiny of a box can you fit yourself into that like your 18-year-old brain you think is the only thing on earth that is even remotely intelligent, you know? Like, yes, I definitely thought that I was smart when I was 18 years old, and now that I am much older, I recognize how much of an idiot I was when I was that age. And I gather, you know, being completely engrossed in this teacher of yours that you think is this big special thing. But I was really expecting to go into Miller's Girl like with this extremely inappropriate sort of racy, raunchy movie. And the reality of it was just kind of a slog. Like, they didn't really get into a relationship or even start doing anything. Like I said, it was an hour in, and they really were mostly just kind of toying with the idea at that point. So it's like past an hour. And this movie is only an hour and 30 minutes long. So it's like, unless I just blacked out and completely missed it, but I really don't remember anything truly inappropriate happening between them for like the majority of the movie. Like I had made it at least halfway through and was like, are we just going to talk about it the whole time? And like, it's supposed to be a thriller movie. Like it's supposed to be suspenseful and intense. And it was the most boring thing that I think I have experienced in quite a while. Like I just was expecting so much more. And especially with everyone being up in arms about the age gap between the two of them, like it makes sense in context of the movie that it is a much older man having a relationship with a much younger woman. So of course you want that age gap to be there with the actors themselves. But to me, it was just like, I didn't even, at the end of the day, end up focusing that much on the age gap difference. I was just like, shit or get off the pot, you know, like let's have this affair or let's call this movie done. Like, what am I still watching this for? I don't know who kind of wrote this script or if they really thought a lot of the comedy was meant to be sort of the racier, raunchier bits that the teenage girls were talking about. I didn't necessarily find anything about this to be like a comedy, and I think it is marketed as like a thriller comedy, but to me, it's not really either of those things. Like it misses the mark on both of them. Really just deeply disappointing that this was so slow and so boring and really just took forever to get to any kind of a plot. So those are my thoughts on Miller's Girl. I would love to know what you guys think of this one if you have watched it. Subscribe if you want to join the Movie Nerd family, and I'd love to see you in the next episode.